And welcome to Racker's 6.0.2 Fury Warrior Guide. I will be covering basic damage dealing abilities, talents, glyphs, and DPS rotation for single and multi-target fights. Let's go ahead and take a look at your damage dealing abilities that you'll be using as a Fury Warrior. The first is Bloodthirst. You're going to want to keep this on cooldown, because every time you use it, you have a 20% chance to gain 2 free wild strikes, or if you crit with Bloodthirst, a Raging Blow. Wild Strike is your main rage burn-off ability and something you're going to be using a lot. Raging Blow is something every time you gain a charge, you can use 1 Raging Blow. However, you cannot have more than 2 charges. So if you're at 2 charges and Bloodthirst and gain a crit, you will not gain a third, effectively wasting that third Raging Blow. So keep this in mind. Now let's get to the talents. The first tier is the charge tier, and my preferred talent is the Juggernaut. I like having more charges over having 2, and a stun is very situational. The second one is the healing tier, and you can opt for Impending Victory or Enraged Regen. Second win is going to be situational or PvP. Impending Victory and Enraged Regen both do the same % of health, but Impending Victory lets you do 15% twice in 30 seconds, and Enraged Regen allows you to just do it once. So I will opt for Impending Victory every single fight unless Enraged Regen is required. The next tier, you're going to want to get Furious Strikes, as it does more damage per second than Sudden Death, and Unquenchable Thirst is something you really don't need. I'll be covering why you won't need this in a future video, but just know it does not do as much DPS as Furious Strikes. The next tier, both Stormbolt and Shockwave are situational, and Dragon Roar is going to be your highest DPS ability. Next tier is very situational. Vigilance or Safeguard will be your preferred picks, and Mass Spell Reflect is actually very good, and Heroics, but a lot of boss mechanics are going to go right through your Mass Spell Reflect, so keep that in mind. The next tier is Avatar, Bloodbath, or Bladestorm. For PvE DPS, you're going to want to pick Bloodbath, unless there's a fight that specifically needs a small window of massive burst, in which case you're going to want to pick Avatar. Bloodstorm will almost never be used, as you can pick Bloodbath and just do your normal rotation while still having Bloodbath. However, there are going to be situations where you may want to use Bladestorm, so do not count that out. Now the glyphs, you're not going to have a lot of options, and even less options until level 100. The ones that I think are the best are Unending Rage and Enraged Speed. This one gives you 20% every time you're enraged, which is a lot, an insane amount. On top of the fact it makes your Berserker Rage basically a mini sprint. Now some of the other abilities, or glyphs that you'll be able to pick out is Death from Above, which reduces the cooldown and range of Heroic Leap. So you're going to want to be careful on what fights you do and do not pick this up for. Die by the Sword is very situational if there is a fight where you're going to need damage reduction, or in a fight where you might have the tank die and you can taunt. You'll be able to get a few seconds out of it, but overall this is a relatively useless glyph. The next one is Rude Interruption. Successfully interrupting a spell with Pummel increases your damage by 6 seconds for 20. Now your Pummel has a 15-second cooldown, so on any fight where you can interrupt, you are almost going to guaranteed have 100% uptime on 6% increased damage, and that is insane. The last one that might be useful is increases the radius of Whirlwind by 4 yards, which is going to be very few fights. Most of your glyphs are going to come in when you're max level, so keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to show you basic rotation. However, it will change entirely dependent on what you have available at your time. Alright, let's take a look at the Fury Warrior DPS rotation. It's going to work out something like this. Bloodthirst, 2 abilities, Bloodthirst, 2 abilities, Bloodthirst, 2 abilities. However, Wild Strike has a reduced global cooldown, so you can often fit 2 Wild Strikes where you can fit 1 Raging Blow. So it might look something like Bloodthirst, 2 Wild Strikes, Raging Blow, Bloodthirst, 2 Wild Strikes, Raging Blow. Bloodthirst, Wild Strike, Raging Blow. Bloodthirst, Wild Strike, Wild Strike, Wild Strike, Wild Strike, Bloodthirst, Wild Strike, Raging Blow. Now that is going to be a lot of your single target rotation. Just spamming those few abilities. Now your AoE is actually coming in when you use Whirlwind. You gain a buff called Meat Cleaver, which increases the number of targets your Raging Blow hits. So on a DPS multi-target fight, you're going to want to Bloodthirst, Whirlwind, Raging Blow, Bloodthirst, Whirlwind, Raging Blow, Bloodthirst, Whirlwind, Raging Blow, Bloodthirst, Whirlwind, Raging Blow. As you can see, the Fury DPS is not a very difficult thing to do, and a lot of it is just dependent on what procs you get. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe for more.